I'm just not sure if we are in presentation mode yet, so I'm just going to, let's see. Live right now?
Yeah, it looks like you are live.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so thank you so much to Kathy, and I am going to just go back and get started. All right. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this evening's presentation, Unlocking Scholarship Opportunities, Strategies for Success. So this is something that I am very well versed in. I've had lots of experience helping students and families identify and earn scholarships. So I'm very excited to bring that to you this evening. We are broadcasting tonight through Facebook. And YouTube, we are live, but there will be a recording of tonight's presentation. And if you've signed up, you will have access to that recording. And we always keep all of our webinars on our website, and I'll share that with you later. And there'll also be some handouts from this evening's presentation. So you will be able to get some of those. So anything that I covered will be readily available for you as part of signing up for tonight's webinar. Just another little housekeeping note right now. I am presenting live but alone. So I'm encouraging anyone who wants to ask a question. I welcome your questions, but I won't be able to see them until the end of the presentation. So please don't let that stop you from asking. And then hopefully you see that I've put my email in the chat. That's going to be Ann, A-N-N, at JRAEC.com. And I welcome any follow-up questions and emails if you can't stay with us through the entire presentation. All right, so welcome again if you're just coming on. And so tonight's scholarship presentation is actually sort of in two parts. The first part is really just to talk about scholarship basics, understanding the whole premise behind scholarships, earning and winning scholarships. And I really want to be able to focus in on the idea of a scholarship, but in terms of creating and developing your college list. I will also talk about national scholarships. And then in part two, I'm going to talk about stacking scholarships. And that's just also about having broad scholarship searches through search engines or other opportunities to apply for scholarships, and then tying that all together. So let's get started. So, what is a scholarship, right? Basically, it is free money. And so that makes it super important. And I can assure you that there is a plethora of scholarships that go every year that are unclaimed. And so I am encouraging everybody who's watching this webinar that the scholarship search should start as early as ninth grade. And I'm going to hopefully present to you how you can start early and identify scholarships, not only in creating your college list, but just generally so. And scholarships are money that you can be awarded and you don't have to pay them back, which makes it really great. When you consider the cost of an education now, this is a very prevalent and common theme that educational consultants like myself are hearing all the time. Obviously, cost is just as important as fit, and making sure that you are identifying the absolute right college choice for you. So this really goes hand in hand. But I have to tell you, and I will be showing you throughout the webinar, how this can be a missed opportunity, how oftentimes that even though the start of the cost of college is the prominent, factor, it often gets to the wayside and can be too late when you've had all of your college decisions come in. All right, so scholarships come in all different forms. And I want to just sort of demystify the idea that, well, I won't qualify for a scholarship because I really can't show financial need, right? Maybe my family is comfortable in their living and we don't feel like we should be applying for any scholarships or that we'll be awarded any scholarships because therefore we don't have that financial criteria. Well, that's not true. And sometimes students will say to me, well, are you sure I could be applying or I could earn scholarships? Because as you know, my GPA, my grade point average, is not as strong as maybe as my peers or others in the competition arena of scholarships that I'm applying for. So when we're talking about scholarships, we're really talking about the recognition and the identification of knowing your strengths and aligning your strengths, whatever they are, if it's within a major, if it's in service, if it's background, if it's religious affiliations, if it's your talents. And yes, of course, if it is about your grade point average or your test scores, there are more than many more ways to earn a scholarship based on a multitude of criteria. So again, the first part of this webinar, I'm really going to start to talk about where scholarships come from on the college and university platform. And then I'll also then narrow it down and talk to you about stacking and gaining those scholarships outside. Now, when you think about scholarships, there's two basic categories that typically scholarships fall under. The first is merit-based. So merit does not necessarily always mean strong test scores or high GPA. Merit can mean academic merit, as I just said, athletic, artistic, or other kinds of talents or additional recognitions that are not necessarily focused on just your GPA. So you're going to be hearing me talk about the word merit throughout the presentation. And I'm going to weave in what merit is and how to know that if it's a merit scholarship or if it's a need-based scholarship. Now, a need-based scholarship typically presents itself when you are searching, can be for a multitude of criterias or, a range of categories. But in a need-based scholarship, you will find that it will ask or might be limited to someone who has maybe a certain financial circumstance, maybe set at a family income, or may be asked that you submit some sort of financial proof that you are in need of the scholarship, so that this way you can be matched with the scholarship based truly on need. Now, circling back to the many categories, let's say, for example, if you're applying for a leadership scholarship, right? So you're seeing here just a small window of different types of scholarships that can present themselves. Say you're applying for that leadership scholarship. It could be that within that scholarship, they are looking for someone who is showing the merit of leadership, and it would have absolutely nothing to do with your financial background or your GPA or other. Or it could be a scholarship for leadership specifically for someone who is showing that demonstrated need. And sometimes a scholarship can be about both. It can be about having that strong leadership, but also having or the need. So one thing that I think I'm going to be hopefully able to show you tonight is how to align yourself with the right scholarships moving forward. Because Identifying with the right scholarship definitely translates to increased winning possibilities. All right, now I really wanted, oops, I don't know why that just came up here. I really wanted to sort of focus in tonight on the biggest source of scholarships coming directly from the college you apply to. And right, building a college list for affordability. Now, let me just kind of pause and just tell you a couple of quick stories here. In my role as an educational consultant, I hear this quite often when I meet with a family and they will make a blanket statement where they are absolutely being so honest and so supportive, and they'll say, we really want to find the best college, the right fit, and we are open to any opportunities or any colleges that fall within that category. And I have seen time and time again when a student goes off under that blanket statement and has applied to colleges, and then they get all of their admissions decisions and they're factoring in all the decisions and trying to make the choice of which school is the best one for them to select. Suddenly the voice of um, financial reason comes into play. And sometimes that can be a contentious conversation based on, well, we thought that's what we wanted to do in our main criteria, is to have an open slate. But actually, now that we see the cost and what it looks like, we actually think that maybe this may not be the right school for you, and you should select this one because it's a fiscally responsible decision based on all the other criteria. I've also had families come to me and say, please do not introduce me to any private colleges. I see the price tags of private colleges compared to public universities. And we really do not want to apply to anything public because we know that public universities and colleges often come with a much higher price tag. And we wanted you to not consider that, only to find out that when I present them with opportunities and to share what that looks like, they are stunned to find that actually a school that they didn't think was affordable actually can be affordable. So within this criteria here, this is what I want to start to talk about. Maybe just in the beginning, recognizing the conversation of cost and affordability. And if it is having this wide open scope, how do you navigate that to make sure that you're looking at colleges where you can earn scholarship for either merit or for need? So here's my first set of advice in here. Shift your mindset. Okay. So one of the great, I think things that I get to experience is I meet representatives. I'm on campuses all the time, and I see incredible colleges offering amazing opportunities that you may not know about, but yet they are providing a large percentage of their student population with lots of scholarship opportunities. So target selective schools, but not hyper selective schools. Now, that doesn't mean that a hyper selective school is not going to offer scholarship. But if you're looking to have the ability to attend a college that is maybe outside of what you're thinking, you want to aim where maybe your academic and profile is probably in their upper 75th percentile. Again, don't make the assumption that private colleges are not going to be affordable. Oftentimes, private colleges have larger endowments, which translates to bigger awards. And then don't be afraid about your geography, where you are, because I can show you later on how many colleges offer scholarships for outside of the region, out of state international scholarships. And colleges will evaluate students as a first-time entry into college freshmen based on any criteria that they have. So researching scholarships, whether it be the formula that they show on the website or whatever that is, can help in that identification process. So if you're just joining me live, just know that unfortunately I can't see any questions, but I am encouraging questions. I welcome anyone to email me if you can't stay on, but I'm going to keep going. Now, one I call it a hidden gem. There's in pretty much every website of every college, you're able to find a net price calculator. But if you can't find it as part of our downloads and resources for tonight's webinar, you will be getting links to this. A net price calculator is often overlooked, but an incredible tool. So what you want to do is you want to find your net price calculator for the school that you're applying to. And what you do is you input basic financial, they ask you a series of questions, financial background, academic data, and it will populate an estimate of what that cost will be. Now, right, so I always think this is a great thing to just sort of start right early beginning of high school, but you can often use these types of tools for comparing college costs based on the net price calculator of what you're presenting at that time. And I always suggest, even if you've started that early on in your high school career, that you move that right probably about a year towards when you are applying to college. But the net price calculator can also be a valuable tool when you are trying to come up with the final price tag. And oftentimes, students and families that I've worked with, I've helped them to take a screenshot of that going into the year and show that to the colleges. Well, this is based on what has been shared. Now, it's not a guarantee, but it's not only serves as a really good tool, but can serve as a strong tool when you're trying to talk to an Office of Financial Aid about final tuition figures moving forward. And it's important to note that the net price does not always equate to the sticker price. So for example, in doing a net price calculator in this example, the estimated cost, or what the cost was showing for tuition, books, housing, and everything, came to $49,000. But however, when I plugged in my financial information, it told me that it looked like I would be paying approximately $36,000, which is nearly $13,000 less than I anticipated. And then, right, maybe if I needed to apply to some loans or getting other scholarships in there, stacking scholarships, I, was surprised to see how much that cost came down. So that is certainly, that net price calculator is an amazing find. Now, trying to navigate these college websites and trying to find this information can sometimes be a little tricky, but I always start by looking at within a college, tuition, financial aid, scholarships, and then this starts to populate. Now, this is a great example. Arizona State University. I'm going to show you examples through the presentation tonight of specific universities. But Arizona State University is it gets a star because I really appreciated what they did. They had somewhat of a net price calculator, but really specific to their university and being able to plug in very finite details. So for example, they asked me my location. I put in my GPA. I indicated that, standard graduation credits. I shared that my test score of an ACT was a 23. I didn't take an SAT. So this is where I'm at right now applying to Arizona State. And so when I clicked their net price calculator, surprise, Anne, you qualify for the New American University Dean's Scholarship. So if I was factoring in their base tuition and then they were showing me the cost of the tuition, that would be $53,000, more than I wanted to spend on college tuition. However, by going in and using that net price calculator, I learned that with this scholarship, my first year would be $39,000. Now, I'm going to tell you about a magical word that you want to be looking for in the scholarship arena. It's coming. But I wanted to also share some other examples from websites. For example, this is R for Rollins, and they had under their scholarships many scholarships, but kind of I was looking within the range of where I was, remember, of my GPA and my ACT that I shared before. And it looks like I'm a perfect match for the Centennial Scholarship. Well, I circled this because the Centennial Scholarship is $24,000 a year. And it's within my range of my ACT, and my GPA had to be above a 2.8, which it is. So that was really exciting for me. However, where I was even more excited to get information from Rollins was this: first time college applicants applying test optional. And sometimes this is a question. So if I'm applying test optional, am I still being evaluated for scholarships as somebody who is submitting a test? And here, Rollins shares that if you are going test optional, you could still, qualify for that Centennial Scholarship, but you would just need to have a little bit of a slightly higher GPA. That's great information, because if I'm not enjoying my testing and things aren't going so well, that gives me confidence in applying test optional at Rollins, knowing that I don't have to submit my test scores to gain the same scholarship that somebody else is gaining. And then, right, remember I told you that don't shy away from private colleges, because they do give, additional, their scholarship awards can be typically more significant than a public. But for example, in the University of Vermont, the presidential scholarship is awarded to any out-of-state first-year student who demonstrates the highest academic performance. So that is based on the application. And obviously that is going to be an example of a strong merit, high GPA. And so if I want to attend, it being in Florida, and I want to go to the University of Vermont, and I'm very strong student, it's possible that I might qualify for scholarship award money anywhere from $18,000 to $25,000 annual. And this was my favorite word. Remember, I told you my favorite word in scholarships: renewable. So anytime you see a scholarship that's renewable, that means that it repeats every year. And typically you will find that a scholarship would have a criteria, a little bit of fine print. So as long as you maintain this, or as long as you are enrolled for so many credits, or whatever that looks like, that is a renewable scholarship. And that tells you that that you will have that, as long as you follow that criteria, you will have that scholarship every year while you're in college for 4 years. So that makes that university even more affordable. Now, right, when you start in the college identification process and application process. I work with many students who are just really questioning, what is it that I want to study in college? And so I always tell families and students, listen, I have tons of students who apply. Undetermined, undeclared rather. And that is perfectly fine. But there is a significant amount of value, and you'll see in some future webinars we'll be giving, particularly in course selection, how it matters. That's in the spring. I do that one. But I talk a lot about how being able to identify what you want to study early on in your high school career has significant benefits for admissions and aligning yourself. And so for scholarships, this is no different. I just recently got an email from Merrimack College. This is the picture that you're seeing here, where they are on a mission to up their Carnegie classified status to an R2 research institution. And so therefore, remember, make the college want you. They are very much, promoting that if you are studying in these STEM majors, that we are pretty much guaranteeing you this $20,000 renewable annually. And so, immediately when I got that, I have a student who is a bio major, and I sent this to her and I said, another reason why you need to apply to this college, because this could turn out to be not only the right fit for you, but could be really an affordable option under that circumstance. So knowing your major and aligning that can also be super important. And you'll see that Scholarship in the websites, they do share that. So just because it's super important for me to show you rather than to tell you, and you'll see this all throughout tonight's presentation, I put together a couple of colleges here where you can see, very specifically their variety of universities, and several of these are state universities, public universities, and where they broadcast or share rather under what majors that they offer award amounts. So imagine that maybe you not only apply or qualify for that, say $20,000, maybe even just as that first time freshman applicant, but you may be awarded additional scholarship money for your talent, or like as in music, because there could be talent scholarships, or for the major that you're studying. So this is not something that just comes naturally. This is about research. So I really encourage, again, remember to avoid that conversation that I talked about from the beginning. And it is sometimes often a little bit tricky to find all this, but when you have the ability to meet with a representative, to take a tour, these should be some of the top questions that you're asking. What are their standard scholarships in the evaluation from when you're applying? What are the major specific scholarships? All this should be adding up to driving some of those decisions when you're thinking about the cost of your education. And then, right, there are schools that we know that offer really strong merit aid. So, for example, you want to look at a college and say to them, can you provide me some of the stats? What percentage of students are receiving aid? Is it merit? Is it need? What is the typical cost reduction that we're seeing beyond the price tag from just looking at this university? So those are great questions too. What is the average award size, and what is the percentage of students receiving that aid? So definitely a couple little tricks of the trade as we're going through. Now, This is definitely something that students, and I understand that, and I really feel this is important for me to bring this to your attention when just talking about scholarships on the college side. This is not always easy to understand and to figure out when you're looking for scholarships. And want to make sure that when you see these scholarships that you're going to be eligible for them and you meet the deadlines. When a college gives you their deadlines, early action, early decision, rolling admissions, early decision two, restricted early action. These are all terms of deadlines or different considerations or, time frames to apply and when you get decisions. It's not always so sort of in your face as to when their merit scholarship deadlines are. And you may see these things like priority. What does that mean? Or, wait, what do I have to make sure I get my application in a certain time, even if I'm going on a decision path that's beyond that? So here's what I'm talking about. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. So right? If we looked at the University of Connecticut, there is no early action deadline. There's regular decision deadline. However, the regular decision deadline is in January. But if you didn't submit your application indicating regular decision by December 1st, you'd miss the deadline to be evaluated for that scholarship. Now, even if a college comes with restrictions when you're applying, maybe such as a restricted REA, meaning that you can apply to a college early action, but under their restrictive terms, you must only do a public school or a regular decision. But with that, it's interesting to note that oftentimes a regular decision deadline typically comes in that early window of January. But look at all the colleges that are telling you that you need to get the application in by a different deadline. That's a big deal. Okay. And I have had students miss what they thought they were going to be evaluated for because they didn't read the fine print. Now, on this is another little window into all of that. And if you look at these colleges, right, you can see that their regular decision deadline is further out than their oops, let me just go back there. Sorry about that. Than their scholarship deadline. So not only is it the research that you need to do in looking for, do you qualify for that scholarship, but the attentiveness of making sure that you get your application in by a scholarship or priority deadline is, I think, even more important in reading the fine print and making sure that you're on top of that beyond the even knowing it. So read the fine print. If you're not sure, I always say call the university. Hi, I'm applying regular decision, but can I still be evaluated for scholarships? And when do you need me to have my application in by so that I can still be evaluated for regular decision, but make the scholarship and priority deadline? Now, seniors, you are more than likely on the Common App. I hope you are already if you're applying to colleges and universities. And so this gets a check plus from me from Virginia Tech. It's not always this obvious, but on the Common App, on their landing page, as you're getting ready to add colleges and apply to colleges, they always show the link to their financial aid website. So that's like right there, makes that search process go a lot easier because it's a direct link to their page. But the other thing is, this is what I'm talking about. It's like, this is golden because they're telling everybody that, the general scholarship application deadline, if you're getting anything in later than that, you're going to miss that. And that could be dependent on maybe even further institutional scholarships that you can apply for. And look what they say down here. Don't wait for an offer of admissions before applying for scholarships. So, oh my goodness, this is about how each college is unique and different in their criteria. And it's so easy to miss this, right? Because if you're not staying on top of it, it is easy to miss. So, note to self, this is something that you really want to make sure that you have navigated as part of the process, because I can't tell you how many times after the applications are in, students then say to me, what about scholarships? And of course, I'm happy to help, but at the same time, what about scholarships is really the conversation that should be in tangent and developed as you're going through the process. Okay, yeah, just a reminder that if you're joining me a little bit later, I can't see questions. I'm hoping you have questions. I will get to them at the end of the presentation, and you are welcome to email me at any time following the presentation if there's something you need to hop off and wanted a question answered. Okay, now back to that Common App. Another missed students, especially our seniors again. If you're on this, there's this little tiny icon here with a money bag here, and it's there for a reason. Oftentimes students don't look at that, and I'll remind my seniors, Common App will, through their scholarship matching, will share scholarships that they do believe from the criteria that you've entered into the application that you could be a great match for. And so there you go. Really don't, you just by virtue of your application, it's in there. But also, there's a great little tool in here too. It's all under the financial aid section, and it's a window that a lot of students, just in their diligence to try to get everything done in the Common App, skip over. But how to apply for financial aid and resources, and many of the resources that are in the Common App. So if you're not at this stage yet, you will be getting from our downloads and additional shares from this webinar. But it's right there, and it's oftentimes a missed opportunity. So just on the wind down of all of that related to scholarships and the college application process and list development for colleges, know the rules. Okay, know what the deadlines are. And we are going to talk about some of these other categories here, like essays and interviews. Track the requirements, the deadlines, if there's separate applications, which there may be a scholarship portal that they will allow you to access. Remember, Virginia Tech, don't wait for admissions to continue applying for scholarships within our institution that are not, where you're not being evaluated as a first-time freshman. And then, right, think strategically. Right? The two should be working hand in hand as you go through the process. All right, let's move forward now, because now we want to talk a little bit about the need side. So I'm not going to do a full presentation on FAFSA, but I will talk a little bit about how I do think it's an important tool. And a lot of times families say to me, I don't think I'm going to fill out the FAFSA because I already know I don't qualify for anything. Well, you always are offered something. It might be a loan, might be a grant, right? But typically, right, I do recommend that you do submit it. Now, like there's always a circumstance, right? Generic information is not tailored information. That's why when you're working with the consultant or when you're thinking about all this, you want to weigh it all out. But I find that the FAFSA has been a great tool because of families if circumstances change. And maybe what your income is presenting one year is not necessarily what your income is presenting the next year. So I do encourage students and families to at least look into this a little bit more strategically. And know that whenever I've had families want to call an office of financial aid at a college and talk to them about their tuition bill, the first question they ask is, did you fill out the FAFSA? Right? Because they don't have some kinds of a heads up on that. And I want to assure you that I have had students who have filled out the FAFSA, have shown that maybe they don't have the need as much as maybe somebody else, but has still earned institutional scholarships, not on the need side. Right, again, it's about weighing it all out. The FAFSA should be opening with right early October. It was a couple of years ago. It's been under a little bit of scrutiny lately, but I think they have worked themselves out now. And if you are a senior, you want to be applying for the 26-27 because that's when you're going to be starting. And then every year you update the FAFSA. And the FAFSA allows you to add up to 10 colleges on the list initially where that report will go, and then you can add over time. So now, another little part of need-based, and this is often overlooked as well. There's approximately about 355 in my last check, mostly private colleges that in addition to completing the FAFSA, will ask that you submit a CSS profile. This is, and if you log on to the CSS profile or if you go to their website, you're able to see that through, just checking on my webinar over here. You're able to see that through this link if you, I mean, it is on the downloads. And you can determine what colleges are a part of that. And a school should be sharing that information on their page that we are a CSS profile school. So that means that, yes, they still want the FAFSA, but they also want this additional financial aid documentation and form to be filled out. And so, again, you want to make sure that if you're applying to a school that is using this criteria, for example, in the state of Florida, University of Miami is a CSS profile college, that you are adding that. Now, it's it's interesting because it is done through College Board. There is a cost, unfortunately, but I do think that the end can justify the means by having this because, again, I can tell you of another example where a family and I called the college and they said, did you complete? And they were part of the CSS profile college list of schools. And they said, did you not only complete the FAFSA, but have you completed the CSS profile? And so, we'll go ahead and complete that and then call us back, right? So having all of this documented and ready to go is certainly really helpful in trying to get money from colleges. So this is even a little bit more extensive in the filing. It's, tax returns, W-2s, and it may seem a little bit more repetitive from what you are putting into the FAFSA, but equally as important. So I did want to share that. And just kind of back to that, to the CSS profile. If you qualify for a fee waiver in any way when you're taking SAT tests, ACT tests, or a fee waiver for applying for colleges, if you meet that criteria, you can also use your fee waivers for the CSS profile. And then finally, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about for students who are merit qualified in their academics and show strong financial need. QuestBridge scholarships is an amazing opportunity. I've had the privilege to work with some students who were able to attend four-year universities that they never thought that they could afford based on a series of criteria that they had: low income, but very strong college applicants. And there's a lot of value in QuestBridge. And I think that if in any way that you're sitting there listening to this presentation and you feel like maybe you might qualify for something like that, I am absolutely encouraging you to get to the QuestBridge website and learn more about QuestBridge scholarship matching for four-year scholarships, at strong scholarships. And they also are very helpful at giving you mentors and summer programs and summer resources. So lots of great opportunities there. Okay, and it's almost October, so some of you, well, most of you juniors will, and then also ninth and 10th graders will be taking the PSAT, but the PSAT has some really incredible scholarship outcomes, and that in and of itself should be in the planning and strategy if you are a strong test taker. I often identify sophomores who I have seen when we work together, that they're strong test takers, that they have certain classes under their belts already, and sort of try to get them ready to take the PSAT. Not just for the outcomes, to use it as a tool for testing and identification and things like that, but also to earn scholarships. And that is really what it is, its intent is. So if you are a strong sophomore, I would say, to plan for next year, and for juniors, take this test seriously, because the outcome with scholarships can be incredible, anywhere from 2,500, and maybe that may not seem like a lot, but it all adds up to college-sponsored awards and corporate-sponsored awards that come from having those high PSAT scores in your junior year and qualifying for the National Merit Program. And then I've worked with some students who have gone through the whole process, because it's beyond taking the test, and it's showing your strength in an actual test score and filling out the application and essay and the merit of your academics. But some colleges very specifically reward national merit finalists with full tuition, housing stipends, and extras. So that in itself is an amazing opportunity. And because I'm still on the show, Don't Tell, these are examples of some colleges where that merit scholarship, that merit scholar award, really is significant in that tuition for that college. So certainly something to aim at if you can. And I want to just give a little bit of a plug because we're constantly providing information sessions, webinars on so many topics. And coming up by the end of this year is understanding your PSAT scores. My colleague Kathy Hart will be sharing that webinar. She does a great job with that, and that will give you some more context and information. I know that she does touch on that topic. And then also focusing on state, awards for state universities. She also does a great job with the Bright Futures scholarship and what that award criteria looks like in January. And so certainly state scholarships are great things to be looking out for as well. And the Bright Futures is definitely all about that. So, okay. Well, I'm going to officially say that we are moving on to part 2, because now that you have some understanding of the scholarship process in terms of really aligning it in developing your college list, how to find scholarships in institutions that you're applying to, and all of that we just covered, I'm now sort of going into the broad sense. Now, there are, again, plethora, a common word I've been using throughout this webinar is that there are tons of scholarship search engines that I always recommend that you get yourself on a couple. Some of them, even the ones that I'm listing here, doesn't mean that if you proposed one to me, oh, Ann, what about this one or that one? I would say, oh, yes, absolutely. I forgot that one, or this is another great one. Sometimes there's there's an overlap, but the great sort of goal in aligning yourself and getting on a scholarship search engine very early on is that you can start to filter. Okay, so scholarships for 9th graders, scholarships for for community service, scholarships for volleyball, scholarships for whatever that is, and you can start to get a criteria, add your GPA, add your test scores, and so that it serves as a nice little tool that just filters everything out and shows you. Some of these platforms will send you directly like weekly reminders, or we found a scholarship for you, reminding you to apply. So these are all really good ones. I have to say that for juniors, I really have found that Big Futures by College Board is an incredible source. I've seen lots of students find, earn, and win scholarships through College Board. I like Raise Me because that allows you to match with certain colleges more specifically. To once you've done a certain set of criteria, then you might find that you have been offered a small scholarship through Raise Me and the identification and alignment process with partnership with a college. I also like Going Merry for students, because Going Merry not only gives you the broad national scholarships, but also takes the information that you put in your profile and allows you and shows you local scholarships as well in your area. So it's not just a national database, which, I think local are always the ones that I'm saying to students, start local, kind of like an accordion. Local, large. And so that's certainly, I think, because the population of competition of students locally is a lot narrower than in a national scholarship. So anyway, that's a great thing. And also, Going Merry allows high school counselors to set up an account with their high school. So your high school might have a partnership with Going Merry, and when I was in that role several years ago, I was able to, with permission, add the transcripts, share letters of recommendation, and so make that process go even faster for a student because I could track and see who's using the portal and what they need from my end. So that's even a great tip just for counselors as well. All right. What is the definition of a local scholarship? So obviously those state and federal, right? Like a Bright Futures, that might be more regional, but local even yet. When students come to me and they say, "Can you help me with scholarships?" and I do, I also say, "How much have you spent time in your guidance office?" and talking to them, because oftentimes scholarship groups or scholarship committee heads will reach out to and to share their scholarship, to encourage students to apply. We'll reach out to the guidance department or to the high school and say, "We have this wonderful local scholarship. Can you share this with your students?" So never skip that step. It's, right. We always want to see who you can talk to in your own high school that can share things. Where they think you'd be best aligned. And then there are community and civic groups, obviously professional associations. Like I've worked with students who applied to a law firm scholarship, a Chick-fil-A scholarship, or they'll tell me, "Oh, my parents' company has a scholarship opportunity within that." I've had students win real estate, right, under the guise of the real estate association or the local energy group, right? So all of these are local scholarships, and I absolutely encourage you to find them and to apply to them. Now, when you're applying to a scholarship where it's not through the college, and sometimes additional scholarships in the college will be looking for certain things to add to that. It's not just maybe filling out a form. So, this to me is something that I really wanted to spend a little bit of time on because it's super important, right? A lot of times students tell me, "Oh, I have to write an essay," but the essay could, and I'll say, "Yes, it looks like you do." The essay can really be the standout feature of a scholarship application, right? It's the opportunity for you to sort of come alive and to tell your story. Now, one of my biggest, pieces of advice when students are writing scholarship or essays for scholarship is to really read the prompt, number one. And then number two is to do your research on the scholarship. Now, for example, a memorial scholarship. I had a student who was applying for a memorial scholarship for, unfortunately, a student who had passed away, and their family sets up, every year for students to apply. And, she said, "I really want to make sure I win this scholarship, or I'm a strong candidate." And I said, "Well, you really need to do your research. Get on the web, find out anything you can about this student, about their background, about anything. Look for students or try to, and sometimes scholarship websites will tell you who the past winners were." Aligning your story with the story of the student or theme of that scholarship is really a key to ensuring that you are moving up to the head of the pack in that opportunity. And, right, these are some of our seniors are probably looking at this and going, this is like the same advice that I'm getting on my personal statement, the compelling hook, drawing the reader in, but really showcasing your unique story as it relates to the scholarship that you are applying to. I can just not tell you how often times that I think, oh, this is a great essay, but I'm not reading this essay and saying, oh my goodness, based on what you're sharing here, this is the heart and soul of why this scholarship was established. And you are aligning your story because of that. And that to me can be a winning scholarship essay. So remember these tips and tricks when you're working through an essay if it's required for the scholarship. Now, it is also not uncommon, right? These are all very similar to the college application process, but for those of you who are starting early, and you should, a resume is a chronological listing of things that you have done throughout high school, or those that can share or help to summarize your academics, your leadership, your involvement, your athletics, your work experience, your research, whatever it is. And it serves as a means for scholarship committees or reviewers to just have a quick, easy document to glance at, maybe to compare candidates, but to also get a quick summary of who you are and what you've been doing throughout, the time in high school or at the time up until you're applying to for a scholarship. And this is another little trick. So, a resume, even though you set it in format under headings, right? And these can be the headings that, an idea for headings, your activities, volunteer, your skills, projects, things like that. When you're putting that resume together, we've often sort of re-strategized the headings or the content or where certain things show up. So for example, if I'm applying for the soccer scholarship, I'm making sure that my first category is showing the strength of me in that athletics. Or if I'm applying for the, community service award, then I'm moving maybe some of my service activities and identification and listings to the top of that of that resume, so that they can clearly see that as one of the first things that they're reading. So not only do you want to start early on getting a resume together and cataloging all the things that you've been doing, including other awards or things that you've earned in recognitions, manipulating your resume in the same way that you're being strategic about your essay. I can say confidently that I do feel that that has oftentimes helped with the students that I've worked with in giving them a little bit more of an edge in the competition. Now, another factor that can come with a scholarship application would be a letter of recommendation. Again, right, but kind of mirroring a lot of the college application process. And I sort of like to kind of have the 5 R's as my rules of getting those letters. The role, understanding the purpose of the letter. So the letter is to support you in the scholarship process. So I always feel that it is really important for you to, when you ask for a letter of recommendation for a scholarship, what I do is I have my students attach a full explanation of what the scholarship is, what the criteria is, maybe their understanding, the timeline of when the scholarship is due, because sometimes a scholarship committee will ask you to attach the letter to your application, or sometimes they want the letters to come in a sort of, where you've waived your rights to see that letter, and they want to see that letter and allow for someone to be very candid. So I always also say, too, for example, if you're applying for an athletic scholarship, right, the coach who knows you well has seen you out there every day, has watched you work with underclassmen, has seen the progression of you, knows your character, knows, your family, whatever, just those, that is then just don't collect random letters of recommendation. Align your letters with the scholarship that you're applying to. So, recommender, second R, selecting the right person. And then, of course, never surprise your recommenders by just, emailing them or allowing them to get a random. Always have a conversation with them. And I always, like I said, like to provide them with either an email, a document, or something explaining so that they're fully informed as to what the scholarship is when they're writing that letter. And then, right, giving them your additional resources, such as your resume or brag sheet, if they want to be able to pull in some things that they don't know about you, additionally so. And I also see that in addition to being an amazing athlete, this student has an incredible amount of service where they often give time back to the community in XYZ. And maybe they didn't know that about you, but that resume or brag sheet gives them that additional context. And then right, respect, always showing gratitude and professionalism, yes, as a high schooler. And I always think a very nice letter of thank you or acknowledgement, and particularly if you've won a scholarship, really letting your recommender know, thank you so much. Your recommendation was a critical component in me earning that award. So I think it's a very important step not to forget. And then, right, organization, because you're hearing it, as I'm going along, you need this, we need that, you want to have that. So I always suggest creating a scholarship tracker. You can always put one together for yourself, or there's lots of them out there, but any sort of, identifying scholarships. And let's say you're in 10th grade and you hear about a bunch of scholarships coming up, and there are for juniors. So the scholarship trackers for the scholarships that you're applying for now, and then the ones that you want to circle back with in 2026 or 2027, where this is an award that you really feel confident you can align with. And so this is an essential part of that, because if you're going to be serious about applying for scholarships and you want to earn scholarships, I liken it to a part-time job, right? Because it is a lot of work. It is research. Once you get going on it, oftentimes students then find that they can be multiple award winners. But any kind of an organization tool, like all of it, is really super helpful. And then what do they need? What does the deadline and all of that? Great to share this with your recommenders as well. Okay. And then finally, just sort of circling back on all of this, I've talked about start early, start early. So what does that look like, right? So, just developing your profile as a freshman, but don't discount the fact that if you're in 9th grade, there aren't scholarships for you that you can start to earn and have. And sometimes scholarship criteria is based that the award money goes directly to the institution if it is very focused on your either your college or even a trade school as well, whatever your post-secondary goals are. So remember that a lot of this advice starts early on, but obviously, if you want to qualify for scholarships regardless and to sort of have all of those areas covered, this is a great way to start navigating and thinking about what are the things I can do early, and can I do something early? And yes, you can. And then I think as it relates to getting a little bit more into that junior year, right? Then that PSAT, the scholarships online, the resumes even maybe more solidified. Maybe you're starting to draft essays, with templates ready to go, but don't just have that generic, okay, here's another scholarship and I'm just throwing out this essay and that my typical scholarship essay. No, remember, tailoring it is the way to earn the money. And then obviously getting ready for everything ahead of senior year, because if you remember what I said earlier, it should not be where you're thinking about scholarships after you submit applications, which is really a lot of times what seniors tend to do. It should be a progression and doing this in the same timeline as applying to college, and as I shared earlier, making the case of even shaping your college list based on most of this. And I talked about this a little bit earlier too, just a few slides earlier, but I'm just a big advocate, especially for, those local, national, not at the college level for your colleges, but anytime you earn a scholarship, it never hurts to say thank you. And, particularly when a scholarship is created based on a certain theme, or it's local, it's in your community, it's or even if your high school committee offers it, that just to show your appreciation to your recommenders and to the people who have awarded you that scholarship. And sometimes that does translate into some networking opportunities, especially if it is local. So I always say be genuine, doesn't have to be a lot. Be specific, make sure if any document that you're sending out, you want to make sure that it's well written, and just don't, avoid those, thank you so much for this scholarship. It's very helpful. If the more that you can add your genuine appreciation, the better off that it is. It doesn't have to be lengthy, but to remember that, and don't delay. So especially for seniors, if you find that you're given a scholarship, maybe in an award ceremony, I always say check in before you leave, find out who to write that thank you note to, because it's, I think, the right thing to do. Okay. And my final takeaways is that scholarship searching and going through those websites, there's so many scholarships out there, but it is something that it just right, you're going to have to do your work, okay? But once you start figuring it out, going through these websites, looking at the colleges, looking at the generic scholarships, and planning in advance, lining up your documents, getting things ready. It is a process, but the benefits of getting started start now with something, because if you put it off and stress about it, then nothing will get done, right? So obviously this would be one of my biggest sort of takeaways here, is that when working with students, sometimes it's disappointing you don't earn a scholarship that you really feel that you're qualified for. But I always say, don't stop, keep going. Just don't do one. Don't get stuck on a dollar amount. Don't think I'm only applying for a $10,000 scholarship. Stack, start small. Look for that alignment and don't give up. Just keep putting out those scholarships and you will land and it will stick. And I think the final takeaway that I didn't talk about is that unfortunately there are scams out there, and you may have heard about it. And so you always want to make sure that if it seems like it's not right, follow up on it. Definitely check up on it. Google it, make sure. If a link isn't working, or if they ask for something that seems a little bit too personal, if it's like a broadcast on a website and you don't feel comfortable about it, always follow up on that. If it sounds too good to be true, it may be. Guaranteed scholarship, if it's not coming from the college, be careful of that. Make sure that you're always looking into the contact information. And, yes, if you want to work with someone to help you with the scholarship process, yes, but never pay for a scholarship application. Never put out money for a scholarship. That to me is a red flag for a scam. So I do find that, most of it is legit, but just always be cautious. And again, if it doesn't seem right, then definitely make sure that you investigate that, so that you know that when you're giving out personal and confidential information, that it is, kept in that confidential, and that it's not a scam. So, okay. I believe it's time for questions. And just as I'm about to get to that point, if there's any way that we can help you, please feel free to reach out to any of to us here at JRA. If you want to work with any of our consultants, or if there's something specifically that we can help you with, we are here to do so. So I am now going to check on questions. Okay, let me get back out of here. Sorry, just navigating that. Wow. Okay, let's see. It looks like we do have a couple of questions in the chat. Okay, this question looks like it is let me just see if I can share that here. Our son is a cadet. Yeah, academic performance. Okay, so I think that seems like that could be a question where, oops, wait a minute. I'm just trying to access this question over here. Let's see if I can get to it, because it doesn't show on my end. I'm so sorry. Let me just get out of sharing my screen here. Let me take that out for 1 minute. Let's see that. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if this helps me with the questions a little bit more. Okay. Oh, I'm trying to get to the questions. It's so frustrating. Okay. So this is above what okay. So for Mark, I absolutely think that's a great question, what I'm seeing there. So what I'm suggesting is that, would you email me, Ann, ANN, at JRAEC, because it is a little bit more of a specific and unique to your son. And I would love to answer that question and give you as much information as I possibly can. All right, let's go down here. It looks like there's another question here. What are the best ways to determine whether a scholarship is legit? We've seen applications that ask for a yes, and we want to be cautious. Absolutely. That's a great question, kind of where I was on the wind down there. And my advice is, a scholarship always should come with contact, a telephone number, an email. And so I always recommend that if you have any sort of, red flag on that you make sure that you're able to contact that scholarship, or get a response from them. And then research that scholarship as well to make sure that it is a legitimate, because you're right. You're thinking about how much you do need to disclose, particularly for a need-based scholarship, where they will be asking you to add a lot of that additional information, right? Sometimes it's on a need base. Can you add the FAFSA, your, the last sheet that tells us what your student aid index is? And again, that's a whole nother conversation on that, but you're right. So I am always, when in doubt, verify it, check it, make sure that it's legitimate, before you do that. And in particularly if any local scholarships, you can always check with your office or call the state and check on that as well. So I do appreciate that. That's a great question. Okay, let me just see if there was anything else that I missed. All right. Well, again, thank you so much. I am so happy that I was able to present this webinar. Obviously, this is a conversation that is always ongoing with me and my students and families, and something that I am well versed in. But obviously, in the span of a short webinar, there's a plethora of things that I absolutely probably could have added, but I hope that at the very least you are walking away from tonight's presentation feeling that you have some initial understanding, where to go, what to do. Keep in mind this presentation is recorded, and you will get that JRA score at the top. We have our webinars online through YouTube, and reach out again for any questions. And we've got great webinars coming up as well. You'll see me back here in 2 weeks. Think you know your GPA. I'll be talking a little bit about how colleges review and look at your GPA, maybe in a little bit of a different way than you realize. So with that, I will say goodnight.